Hi guys, it's CryptoBurp Adrian speaking. Welcome to today's exclusivity report. Today I'm going to kick it off for you with a weekly chart on Bitstamp Bitcoin USD spot price. Well, let's give it a go. And shall we start with, of course, the very results of what we had seen for the entire 2021 with 2022 combined. And I'm talking about this major sideways pattern that eventually, was slightly uplifting. However, this had proven, many times that there were a lot of traps, and instead of a proper bull market, there was definitely a significant fundamental change in the trend and the weakening, which eventually later brought us in to the major sell-off and the proper bear market after breaking below 29 and $28,000, right? Of course, it kicked off with the May-ish, sell-off for the Luna crash, which induced a lot of fear and a lot of liquidations to the market, basically breaking down the entire structure, breaking down this entire, I should say, support, the fundamental support in the market, and there was nothing basically stopping, the market behind it or before major pass to the downside. And here we are instead looking at this, of course, lack of follow through that many stocks had, right? You can remember that a lot of moving averages, I mean, even if we open it here right now, a lot of moving averages, for stocks. Here's an instance of a 200-day average. Many stocks had a very similar kind of like a shape, and orientation for the stocks, for the stocks averages on the 200-day basis, mainly because Bitcoin has had very strong correlation, which means that there were whatever stocks that Bitcoin did as well within the same directions, most likely and most often. And many stocks, had retested their 200-day average and then already followed through to the downside. Instead, after rejecting the averages, Bitcoin did not manage to even climb as high, right? It rejected the rally right in the middle of it, not even getting ever to $30,000 region. So far, we are truly looking at this mean reversion level at around $29,000, 29,500 approximately. That is truly the level to look at for the 200 days. 200 days is a long term. 200 days shows you the average trend of Bitcoin prices on the past most recent 200 days of price action. This is not a short-term indicator. Instead, we are looking at a valid major resistance. So I would argue that the proximity to $30,000 area, which is a beautiful round number, and people tend to anchor towards round number, and hence the prices tend to gravitate towards those beautiful round numbers. I would argue that the entire zone between 29,500, where the 200-day averages, and the $30,000 region could be considered as resistance, especially that we are truly talking about a very same area, that Bitcoin had experienced many times to find bounces in there, right? So I'm talking, of course, about the past $30,000 region. So here, truly looking at this sideways pattern, whatever that is, truly, perhaps just a little bit, reminds this, head and shoulders pattern. With a left shoulder with a head which is higher and with a right shoulder. However, it's not too much relevant. And whatever that pattern is, to be honest, no matter how we frame it, how we phrase it, it definitely shows the lack of a follow through in either direction. So we are swinging back and forth, right? Swinging back and forth between the June lows at 17,500 and $25,000 for the swing high. In all honesty, such patterns, such sideways patterns following the major sell-offs tend to promote the trend continuation much more than trend reversal, right? We are not really looking at any significant change on the macroeconomic side. There's been definitely nothing but a bearish sentiment, nothing but extremely low consumer reading, consumer uh, sentiment index, which definitely induces a lot of fear and this continued economic slowdown. We are talking about recession. This week, we're also having on Wednesday the FOMC and the decision about the next rate hikes, perhaps 50, perhaps 75, three quarters of a basis point, basically, of a complete point, of a percentage point. We're truly talking about a lot of insecurity and a lot of uncertainty in the market, and the traders react to it. Because remember that the prices or that the price directions are reflecting the traders' expectations, right? What we trade and what we see in the market is the expectation of the future prices, of the future trends, So this is what drives, right? The anticipation for what may happen in future is what drives the makes the price gravitate towards set and support or resistance. So here, truly looking at this, massive underperformance, um, you know, and truly sideways kind of like vibe on the price pattern basis. Now, knowing that we are in the primary bear market, this much more brings to me, I would argue that that expectations for the negative kind of like resolving here for Bitcoin to go lower, and if that happens, this could perfectly make it for a measured move, somewhere closer to the $10,000 area. We don't know if it happens. We don't know, when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball, and the very primary tool of technical analysis by no means, is definitely by any means not predicting the future per se, but it's adjusting to the risk factors, right? So we use it solely to quantify the risk, and we can tell that the risk is significant in here, significant to the downside. Even if we turn off, of course, the divergence systems, because this typically works much better in the where the longer tails do not develop, but the market moves in a sideways and a range bound movement. Here on the higher time frames, the long-term trends prevail. Here is the 200-day average trend line. Just like I was saying, we can tell that this is a fairly steady decline. There has not been any sign of like smoothening, flattening out. It has just been continuing, to decline. And arguably that, if we do not predict, if we do not actually see a record, any follow through to the upside over $26,000, now then this is going to be extremely difficult to get us and shoot over or overshoot, somewhere into that 29,500 or $30,000 area, just like I mentioned before. For this reason, actually having significant remark, here on the bearish note after Bitcoin failed, yesterday with a quite a nasty weekly close. If we truly get this confirmation for the Bitcoin close on the current time frame trailer basis below 20, below 20,000, let's actually be very much more specific, 19,400, 19,500, yet I would argue that Bitcoin bears get actual significant confirmation to the downside.